My parents didn't go to my wedding because I got married before my perfect sister. Now their perfect family image is finally crumbling after being together for 4 years. I, 32, got married 8 months ago. Everyone went to the wedding except for my sister, Malene, 30, and my parents. My parents' decision to skip the event was startling. I wasn't too shocked by my parents not going to my wedding, but I was a bit surprised. We've never really been close, but with our past, I should have seen it coming. Here's the lowdown on our family. I can't really blame my parents for always favoring my sister. She's always been more popular. I wasn't too shocked about my sister not being there because we've never really been close. But looking back, I should have seen it coming. Here's the deal with our family. I can't really blame my parents for always favoring my sister. She's always been good at everything she's done. She was the center of attention wherever she went. As soon as she could walk, she won every spelling, science fair and talent show in elementary school. She was class president, valedictorian, and prom queen. In high school, she was tall, slim, and good-looking enough to pursue modeling while she was studying for her business degree. She got her first modeling job during her sophomore year, and I can still remember it. To celebrate, my parents invited all of our family members and her friends to a big party. Her first professional headshot was, so I've got this framed picture in my living room right above the fireplace. It's been there since I got my computer science degree. The year I graduated, they just said, "Well done," and got on with organizing Malene's next photo shoot. She got a job at a big company straight after, got a corner office and a company car, and is now a senior executive. I'm 30. And I work for a decent computer company as a mid-level software developer. I'm happy with my work. It's a decent profession, but it's not the type of job that it makes parents boast in front of the family. Also, I'm bigger and shorter than my sister, and my mom made rude comments about how I looked. She signed me up for exercise classes I didn't want to attend and put me on diets all the time. When I was growing up, she would say, "Malene never struggles with her weight or you." My mom and dad were always boasting about me to everyone. They were always making rude comments about how I looked and signed me up for exercise classes I didn't want to go to and put me on diets. When I was growing up, she would say, "Malene never struggles with her weight or looks as nice as your sister if you just put in a little more effort." I learned to ignore these remarks by high school, but they still had an impact over the years. I've come to terms with the fact that my parents never took as much delight in my accomplishments as I tried to get their approval for years by attending classes they recommended, joining clubs they encouraged, and even trying modeling for a short time, but it never worked. My sister never let me forget, however, that nothing was ever enough. I was just the second daughter, and they were completely enamored with my sister's achievements. I gave up trying to impress them sometime in my mid-20s. I concentrated on creating my own life, growing professionally on my own terms and forming bonds with individuals that respected me for who I am. To be honest, following that, things have improved. Knowing my parents were always worried about how other people thought of them, I made sure I only talked to them a bit so we didn't have any arguments at Christmas or at family get-togethers. I never smiled when they talked about Malene's job, boyfriend, or holiday places. My parents were always worried about how other people thought of them, so I tried not to show any strong emotions around them. I made sure I didn't get too close to Malene, but at a computer conference I met my spouse through a mutual friend. He noticed me, he saw me, he liked my sense of humor, my ability to code, and even my body type. Right from the beginning, he never once he said I should change or make comparisons to other people, but he proposed to me after 4 years of dating when we were alone at home, enjoying takeaway and our favorite TV in the background. It was flawless. Naturally, I told my folks that I was engaged last year. My first clue should have been their response. There was no congratulation, only stillness. My mother then questioned whether I was certain I wanted to jump right in, and recommended that I might want to improve my physical condition before the wedding. My father didn't say much at all during the engagement party. My husband noted their odd reaction, which I was too. I was really keen to know what was going on, so I went over to my mom's phone in the corner. My husband told me he'd heard my parents talking to Malene on the phone. Malene was crying and they were saying that this wasn't the plan and that they never expected Rebecca to get married first. He said there were some problems with the wedding planning. Even though they weren't engaged, my mom had already made loads of wedding Pinterest boards for Malene and wasn't interested in helping me pick a dress or venue. I just said it was practical and flattering for my figure when I picked out my dress. A simple but gorgeous A-line dress that made me feel great. My future mother-in-law, who treated me like the daughter she never had, and I ended up working together on most of the preparations. I carefully reviewed and double-checked the guest list with my future husband to make sure no one was overlooked. Before sending out the wedding invitations, I made sure my parents received theirs by including red receipts in the electronic invitations. I called, texted, and emailed them several times after that. I knew they hadn't replied, so my male guests either got ignored or the answers were a bit evasive, with people saying they were busy and needed to check their schedules. I couldn't worry about it too much because I was busy getting ready for the wedding. My in-laws were really helpful though and offered to help out. They even helped with everything from seating maps to floral arrangements, even at the lovely bridal shower hosted by my husband's sister. The painfully obvious absence of my own family was never brought up, even though my parents weren't there. The wedding day itself was beautiful. We held a late afternoon celebration after. The morning wedding was in a garden setting, and everyone was right when they said we looked so happy and in love. But there were times when their absence felt like a physical pain, like when I saw the front row seats empty or at the father-daughter dance that I was not able to attend. I looked for answers after the wedding. I tried to get to the bottom of things. They said they were really hurt that they'd never been sent a proper invitation. I eventually got through to them on the phone. My mother went on, saying how careless I was, how she'd always wanted to help organize her daughter's weddings, and how she couldn't understand why I hadn't asked her. So, they said they were really hurt that they never got a proper invite to the wedding. When I finally got through to them on the phone, my mom started going on about how careless I was, how she'd always wanted to help with their daughter's weddings and couldn't understand why I'd left them out of such an important occasion. I was confused because I was sure we'd sent them both kinds of invitations. I checked our records and we had, but even the physical invitations had been delivered. I didn't confront them about trying to gaslight me. I just said sorry for the mix-up and ended the call. Later, my husband mentioned a few things that showed what they really meant, like how they seemed surprised instead of happy when we told them we were engaged, or how they kept on suggesting reasons not to get involved in the wedding planning. He didn't want to add to my anxiety during the process. He hadn't mentioned these findings earlier, but looking back, the pattern was clear. The idea that I, the less successful daughter, was getting married before their beloved Malene was too. It just confirmed what I had always thought but had denied. I'd never be able to compete with my sister in their eyes. The most depressing thing was realizing that even my wedding day, which should have been a celebration of love and new beginnings, turned into... My parents' attitude made it clear that they'd always seen me as competition for Malene. It was so sad to see that even my wedding, which should have been a celebration of love and new beginnings, became just another battle in their never-ending war to keep up their perfect family image. Malene recently got engaged to someone she'd been dating for a year. I heard from some family members in group chats that my parents were super excited about planning an extravagant wedding for her. They're already bragging about finding fancy venues and luxury dresses, and my mom's taking Malene to private fittings at posh stores. It's interesting that so many in our family are suddenly turning their backs on I went to Malene's wedding and engagement party, and my parents' actions at my wedding apparently became a topic of conversation in the family. I just tell my family members what I think is real. When they ask why my parents didn't attend my wedding, they can't handle it when I marry before their beloved. I just tell them what I think is true. I don't embellish or try to gain sympathy. A few days ago, my parents got in touch and accused me of trying to ruin Malene's wedding. They said their relatives are avoiding it. Her wedding-related festivities. My cousin, who my sister confided in, told her that people are reluctant to come because they've heard about my parents' treatment of me. My parents claim that because I'm envious of my sister's impending lavish wedding, I'm spreading false stories. The problem is that only since my last post, I've had a lot of discussions with my parents about how they behaved at my wedding. I told them straight up that I didn't appreciate how they talked about me behind my back. They're saying I'm making things up, but the truth is I'm just telling people what happened. Maybe they should think twice before blaming me for how things turned out. Things are changing so fast, and it's getting harder and harder to keep up the facade of a relationship with my parents. Their behavior at my wedding was the last straw. I realized that no matter what I did, they'd never be satisfied with me. It's not just their absence that's tough. It's coming to terms with the fact that I never had the kind, encouraging parents I always wanted. I'm focusing on creating a life with I'm looking for someone who really gets me right now. I'll let you know if anything important changes. First update. Since my last post 2 weeks ago, a lot has happened. I decided to talk to my parents in person about their actions at my wedding and their current claims that I ruined my sister's special day. After reading your encouraging comments, I felt it was time to be honest. When they started texting me about their tarnished family history, my parents quickly started making accusations during our phone call. They said I was jealous of Malene and had planned I did something I'd never done before. I agreed with them, but not in the way they'd expected. Instead of defending myself like I usually do, I said, "You're right. I'm envious not of Malene's career, her achievements, or her appearance. I'm envious of the unwavering love and I did something I'd never done before." I agreed with them, but not in the way they'd expected. Instead of defending myself like I usually do, I said, "You're right. I'm envious, not of Malene's career or her achievements or her looks. I'm envious of the unwavering love and support you've shown her, which you never even made an effort to show me." There was a pause in the line. Then my mother started saying I was exaggerating and that they'd always treated us equally. Something broke inside me at that moment. Feelings I'd repressed for years came flooding out. I told them about all the times my mom didn't show any interest in my achievements and instead focused on Malene's. Like when Malene got a modeling job, my mom canceled my high school graduation dinner. Or when she spent more on her prom outfit than I did on college textbooks for a whole year. I carried on even though my dad tried to. I talked about how it felt to watch them spend years organizing my sister's fictitious wedding, while showing no interest in my own. I told them how painful it was to see my parents' seats vacant, and how my mother-in-law had to help me with everything from wedding preparation. I also mentioned how it felt to watch them spend years organizing my sister's fictitious wedding while showing no interest in my own, and how my mother-in-law had to help me with everything from wedding preparation. I also talked about how it felt to watch them spend years organizing my sister's fictitious wedding while showing no interest in my own, and how my mother-in-law had to help me with everything from wedding preparation. I also mentioned how it felt to watch them spend years organizing my sister's fictitious wedding while showing no interest in my own, and how my mother-in-law had to help me with everything from wedding preparation. I also mentioned how it felt to watch them spend years organizing my sister's fictitious wedding while showing no interest in my own, and how my mother-in-law had to help me with everything from wedding preparation. I also talked about how it felt to watch them spend years organizing my sister's fictitious wedding while showing no interest in my own, and how my mother-in-law had to help me with everything from wedding preparation. I also mentioned how it felt to watch them spend years organizing my sister's fictitious wedding while showing no interest in my own, and how my mother-in-law had to help me with everything from wedding preparation. I also talked about how it felt to watch them spend years organizing my sister's fictitious wedding while showing no interest in my own, and how my mother-in-law had to help me with everything from wedding preparation. I also mentioned how it felt to watch them spend years organizing my sister's fictitious wedding while showing no interest in my own, and how my mother-in-law had to help me with everything from wedding preparation. I also talked about how it felt to watch them spend years organizing my sister's fictitious wedding while showing no interest in my own, and how my mother-in-law had to help me with everything from wedding preparation. I also mentioned how it felt to watch them spend years organizing my sister's fictitious wedding while I said how awful it was to see my parents' seats empty at my sister's wedding, and how my mother-in-law had to help me with everything, from the wedding prep to buying clothes. Their reaction was interesting. They hit back at me instead of listening to any of my points. "Why didn't you speak up if you felt this way?" As if I hadn't tried to talk to them for years. My mother insisted. My father went on to say that by talking about these feelings with our family members, I was being unfair and spiteful. My mother said something at that point that ultimately cleared everything up. We never imagined you'd go to such lengths as to try to ruin Malene's wedding out of spite, but we always knew you were insecure about her success. She stated, "This is not how we brought you up." I realized they couldn't hear me, and they thought their behavior and how I was feeling had nothing to do with the situation. They were more worried about Malene's wedding than the hurt they caused me. Even during this chat about their absence from I knew they couldn't hear me, but they acted like their behavior and how I was feeling had nothing to do with the situation. They were more worried about Malene's wedding than the hurt they caused me. Even during this discussion about their absence from my wedding, I didn't try to make things better for the first time ever. I didn't take it back or say sorry. Instead, I told them how I felt. "You're right about one thing, you raised me. You made me think I'd never be good enough and that Malene's achievements would always be better." At the wedding, I didn't try to make things better for the first time ever. I didn't take it back or say sorry, but I did tell them how I felt. "You're right about one thing, I was raised by you. You made me think I'd never be as good as Malene, and that what she did was better than what I did. But you also taught me that I deserve better than this, which wasn't what you were trying to teach me." Before my dad spoke, there was a long pause. He spoke in a calm, collected tone. "Maybe it's time for us to stop acting like we're bad parents, since you've already decided that we are, and you obviously like seeing us suffer since you're family. We thought you would help sort this out, but it's clear that you've made your own decisions." The last blow was from my mom. "Maybe I just couldn't handle not being the center of attention, even though we always tried to treat you both fairly. Rebecca, it's not our fault you decided to play the victim." I didn't argue because it would have been pointless. Everything I'd been saying had just been validated by them. They couldn't admit to being involved in anything, even at the last discussion. I just hung up and said goodbye. I was surprised to feel relieved after the call. I cried, of course, but not the frantic, heartbreaking kind I remember from my early years. These were liberating tears for the first time I had ever shed. I was surprised to feel so relieved after the call. I'd shed some tears, yes, but not the frantic, heartbreaking kind I remember from my early years. These were liberating tears. The first time I'd expressed everything I needed to say without holding back or feeling guilty about how I felt later. My husband saw me gazing at the sunset from our back porch. He sat next to me and grasped my hand without saying anything. "They're never going to change, are they?" I asked him after a while. "No," he said, squeezing my hand. I said to my husband, I just feel like everything I needed to say without holding back or feeling guilty about how I feel later, I've said." He sat next to me and grabbed my hand without saying anything. "They're never going to change, are they?" I asked him. "No, but you have," he replied, squeezing my hand. "That's what counts." He's right. I've changed. The young child who frantically tried to win her parents' approval is no longer there. They no longer need to validate the woman who came out of that last conversation. Although acknowledging that my parents will never be the people I need them to be, as painful as that is. Rewrite the text in a more casual tone. It's not as painful as hoping they'd change for the first time. I don't really care what happens with my sister's wedding or the family drama. I've said what I needed to say, and now it's up to them to deal with whatever comes up. The weird thing is, I feel like I've carried this burden my whole life. It's not as painful as hoping they'd change for the first time. I don't care about the wedding or the family drama. I've said what I wanted to say, and now they have to deal with whatever happens. It's strange, but it feels like a weight has been lifted. It's not the ending I hoped for with my parents, but maybe it's the one I needed. I guess I just needed to stop trying to find love. Second update. 3 days since I saw our parents, and things have taken a surprising turn. Malene made I've finally been lifted, but it's not the happy ending I'd hoped for with my parents. Maybe it was the one I needed. The ability to quit striving for love ought to have come naturally. Second update. 3 days have passed since I ran into our parents, and things have taken a surprising turn. Malene made the decision to become involved in the drama, but her strategy failed horribly. My sister sent me a thoughtfully composed message yesterday morning. She developed a condescending tone over the years, and it was evident in her text that what you said to your parents was totally inappropriate. They've helped us through every stage of our lives and given us everything. You can't blame them for being poor parents because you're insecure about the decisions you've made in life. She continued the message with her typical blend of moral superiority and covert jabs. I understand that your wedding wasn't exactly what I had imagined, something like that, but that doesn't mean you should try to destroy mine. There's nothing wrong with wanting a celebration that honors those of us who have put in a lot of effort to meet specific standards. Rebecca, not everything needs to be a competition. I didn't bother to answer. I've discovered that interacting with, I had imagined it, but that doesn't mean you should try to destroy mine. There's nothing wrong with wanting a celebration that honors those of us who have put in a lot of effort to meet specific standards. Rebecca, not everything needs to be a competition. I didn't bother to answer. I've discovered that interacting with her only provides her with more ammunition. After years of putting up with her manipulative behavior, I just blocked her number. Malene has never been one to put up with being ignored, so I assumed that would be the end of it. My husband, who was laughing so hard that he could not speak, called me at work a few minutes later. A few hours later, Malene couldn't get hold of me directly, so she found his number, probably via a common acquaintance, and sent him a string of texts outlining the precise reasons why our sister relationship has never been good. She began her initial communication to him in a sufficiently professional manner. As Rebecca's sister and someone who cares deeply about our family's well-being, that I feel compelled to reach out. However, it soon turned into her actual motivations. She informed my husband that he had an obligation to help me behave in a more suitable manner, because he was the new man in Rebecca's life. The messages are getting more and more patronizing. Family dynamics are complicated. She told my husband, a professional software architect with an MBA, that someone with Rebecca's sensitivity might not understand the bigger picture. She advised him to help me see reason before I irreparably harm family relationships. Her attempt to play on what she believed to be his social climbing impulses was the real kicker, though. In fact, she wrote, "Surely you understand that maintaining good relationships with successful family members like myself could be beneficial for your future. Rebecca's behavior is only hurting her own prospects, and by extension yours, have always been able to see through Malene's facade." My spouse thought her attempt at manipulation was funny. He particularly liked her presumption that her business rank or the prospect of networking opportunities would somehow impress him. In his own words, "She really doesn't know me at all, does she?" We reviewed the messages together when I got home that night. I was laughing with my hubby instead of feeling offended or upset. Seeing Malene's deceptive methods exposed, particularly when they were aimed at someone who was totally impervious to them, was liberating. I learned something. My sister's still insecure and needs to tear others down to feel superior, even though she's done well in life. She thinks she can control me by manipulating my husband, but she doesn't know much about good relationships. When that didn't work, she tried to use my husband against me, which was the most revealing thing she's ever done. My sister's still the same. She's still insecure and needs to tear others down to feel superior, even though she's done well in life. She thought she could control me by manipulating my husband, but when that didn't work, she tried to use my husband against me, which was the most revealing thing. She did the same in high school. When she couldn't bully me directly, she tried to turn my friends against me. It's the same strategy, just a different decade. With this fresh viewpoint, I now understand how Malene's actions went beyond simple sibling rivalry. Throughout our early years, she made a concerted effort to keep her status as the favorite child. She always told our parents and me how much better she was. She had to overshadow whatever I accomplished. She had to point out exactly. In high school, she tried to turn my friends against me when she couldn't bully me directly. It's the same strategy, just from a different perspective. I now get how Malene's actions went beyond simple sibling rivalry. During our early years, she made a concerted effort to keep her status as the favorite child. She kept on telling our parents and me how much better she was. She had to overshadow whatever I accomplished. She had to point out my shortcomings to everyone I made friends with. My response to her games is different now. Her messages would have caused me to fall into self-doubt. 10 years ago, I would have been upset and hurt. 5 years ago, I would have been more upset. Today, simply put, I'm sick of the drama and find her blatant attempts at manipulation amusing. My husband's response was ideal. Rather than getting embroiled in her drama, he merely responded, "Thank you for your concern about Rebecca's well-being as her husband. I'm not as bothered by her games as I was. I'm not as upset by her messages as I was. 10 years ago I would have been hurt and upset. 5 years ago I would have been upset. I'm sick of the drama and I find her blatant attempts at manipulation amusing." My husband's response was ideal. He simply said, "Thank you for your concern about Rebecca's well-being as her husband. I'm focused on supporting her happiness, not managing her behavior. I think it's best if you direct any future concerns to Rebecca directly. Have a nice day." Malene sent one last message after not receiving the desired response. "I see she's poisoned you against the family too. Don't say I didn't try to help when this all blows up in your faces." Ironically, Malene's attempt to assist has further strengthened my resolve to keep my distance from destructive dynamics. I'm more interested in her happiness than in controlling her behavior. I think it's best if you talk to Rebecca directly about any concerns you have. Have a nice day." Malene sent one last message after not getting the response she wanted. "I see she's poisoned your mind against the family too. Don't say I didn't try to help when this all blew up in your faces." Ironically, Malene's attempt to help has made me even more determined to keep my distance from the destructive dynamics of my family. Nothing has changed, as you can see from her messages to my spouse. She is still the same cunning individual who feels the need to dictate every story, and who perceives any departure from her ideal family script as a danger. The most pleasant aspect of the entire incident is perhaps the fact that her attempts at persuasion were so totally unsuccessful. She succeeded in bringing my spouse and me closer together, rather than causing us to drift apart completely unconcerned. My family. Nothing's changed, as shown by her messages to my spouse. She's still the same sneaky person who thinks she's got to dictate every story, and who sees any deviation from her perfect family idea as a threat. The best thing about the whole thing is that she succeeded in bringing my spouse and me closer together, rather than causing us to drift apart. We joked about her texts and planned a weekend trip during the evening. I've come to understand that true family isn't about pretending or dictating stories. It's about standing together, laughing together, and supporting one another when someone tries to manipulate you, even your own sister. I'm more certain than ever that I'd be better off keeping a safe distance from Malene's wedding drama, instead of getting sucked in. I've come to understand that true family isn't about keeping up appearances or dictating stories. It's about standing together, laughing together, and supporting one another when someone tries to manipulate you, even your own sister. I'm more certain than ever that I'd be better off keeping a safe distance from Malene's wedding drama, instead of getting sucked into my family's never-ending power struggles. My husband and I have decided to concentrate on creating our own happiness. Success is said to be the best form of retaliation, but I'm coming to realize that real success isn't about impressing people. It's about accepting your decisions and surrounding yourself with individuals that encourage, rather than impede, your own development. I feel more successful than ever by that metric. Third update: after my sister tried to control my husband, and 2 weeks ago things took a turn for the worse. Despite my parents' desperate attempts to repair their reputation, I've found out through family ties that they've been on a mad quest to correct the narrative. They've been phoning each relative separately and accusing me of spreading vile tales because I'm envious of Malene's ideal wedding. They claim that I'm just resentful, since my parents' wedding was way more sophisticated and gorgeous than mine. They've been trying to make it seem like I'm the one being spiteful. They're still living in the same house they've had for 30 years, and they've had the same email addresses since email was invented. But they're saying I sent their invitation to an old email address and an old physical address. The good news is that their attempts to I decided to leave them out of my wedding on purpose, so I could play the victim. It's funny that they still live in the same house they've owned for 30 years and have the same email addresses since email was invented. But they're saying I sent their invitation to an old email address and an old physical address. The good news is that their attempts to limit the harm are failing miserably. Our family members don't believe it. In fact, a number of family members have shared their personal accounts of my parents' history of partiality. According to one aunt, My mother had previously engaged in similar antics at family weddings in an effort to guarantee that Malene was the life of the party. The way my extended family has reacted to my parents' manipulation is the most fulfilling development. Important family members. It's really sad how my parents are failing miserably. A lot of our family members don't believe it. Some of them have even spoken about how my parents have always been a bit biased towards Malene. One aunt said that my mom had done the same thing at family weddings before, just to make sure that Malene was the life of the party. It's really great to see how my extended family has reacted to my parents' manipulation. Some of them were supposed to have important roles in the wedding, but they've stopped supporting Malene's wedding. They might not be able to get the exclusive location that they were able to get through family ties. Even a family friend's luxury garment business has had unexpected scheduling conflicts at a family get-together last weekend. Things reached a breaking point when someone asked about my wedding pictures, and my mom became some of the people who were supposed to be really involved in the wedding have decided not to go. They might not even be able to get into the place they were supposed to because of their family connections. Even a family friend's fancy clothing business had problems last weekend. Things got to the point where someone asked about my wedding pictures, and my mom got annoyed and started getting defensive. She said that I had changed after getting married and was trying to ruin the family. But her outburst had the opposite effect. And a lot of relatives who didn't know what was going on got a shock. It's pretty ironic that the way my parents are trying to keep up this perfect family image is the reason it's falling apart. Every time they try to explain why they're not at she started going on about how I'd changed after getting married and was trying to destroy the family, which was a bit rich given her track record. A lot of relatives were in the dark about what really happened, and it just made them look even worse. It's pretty ironic that the very thing my parents are doing, trying to keep up the perfect image, is actually destroying their marriage. Every time they try and justify not being at my wedding, they end up revealing more about who they really are. People are starting to see through their lies, and the more they try and make out I'm the bad guy, the more people are starting to take sides. Even my dad's brother, who's always been pretty quiet to keep the peace, has apologized for not speaking up about how they treated me. He's decided not to go to any of Malene's wedding stuff. With my family, I don't have to answer any of this explicitly, so the truth is taking care of everything for me. My parents always wind up revealing more of their destructive conduct when they try to twist the truth. It comes out that all those years of staying silent and putting up with their treatment in an effort to keep the peace was really just a way of allowing their actions. My husband said it in the best possible words. They with his family, I don't have to answer any of this explicitly, so I'm not worried about that. The truth is taking care of everything for me. Malene and my parents always wind up revealing more of their destructive behavior when they try to twist the truth. It turns out that all those years of staying silent and putting up with their treatment in an effort to keep the peace was really just a way of allowing their actions. My husband said it in the best possible words. They constructed a facade of the ideal family over many years, but it was based on emotional manipulation and partiality. Eventually, it was going to fall apart. I'm doing better than ever personally. I no longer have to worry about attempting to win my parents' approval. The stress of controlling Malene's emotions has subsided. I'm not concerned about upholding their ideal family image for the first time in my life. Sometimes the best retaliation is just letting the truth. I built an ideal family facade over many years, but it was based on emotional manipulation and partiality. It was always going to fall apart. I'm doing better than ever personally. I no longer have to worry about winning my parents' approval. The stress of controlling Malene's emotions has subsided. I'm not concerned about upholding their ideal family image for the first time in my life. Sometimes the best retaliation is just letting the truth speak for itself. Rather than taking action, I'm grateful to Reddit for giving me the courage to advocate for myself. You have no idea how much your guidance and encouragement have meant to me along this path. Sometimes you need to see what true family support looks like from strangers you met online. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.